Hello everyone, this is Gokar and today we'll be discussing our last ethical hacking discussion board topics and legal concerns surrounding Google's dominance in the online search industry and whether the Google has become a modern monopoly. So this presentation is based on the case study, the Google, the new monopolist from cyberethics, morality and law in cyberspace. In today's digital world, companies like Google influence not only technology, but also information access, commerce, and communication, and even like public opinion. So because of that, questions about ethics, competition, and corporate responsibility have become more important than ever before. So we'll live in an era where the handful of technology companies shape the how billions of people access information, conduct commerce, and navigate everyday life. So companies such as Google, Amazon, Apple, and Meta have grown from small startups into trillion-dollar the global institutions. Unlike traditional monopolies, digital monopolies are strengthened by network effect and data collection, so making it extremely difficult for competitors to survive. Personally, I think this topic is extremely important because companies like Google are no longer simplified search engines. They influence advertising, online shopping, travel services, mobile operating systems, and even what information people see first online. So when one company controls access to information itself, the ethical questions involving transparency, bias, fairness, and consumer autonomy become the central concerns rather than optional responsibilities. Okay, in this slide, we're going to talk about the background. So to understand the Google's current position, we first need to look back at Microsoft monopoly during the browser wars of the late 1990s. So Microsoft bundled Internet Explorer with Windows in order to dominate the browser market, and the Department of Justice accused the company of abusing monopoly power. So the Google's rise happened differently because the company became dominant through a superior search engine and its PageRank algorithm, which delivered faster and more accurate search results than the competitors such as Yahoo and AltaVista. Over time, Google expanded far beyond the search into Gmail, Maps, YouTube, and Android, Chrome, and online advertising. So eventually, regulators in both the United States and Europe began the questioning whether Google was using its dominance in search to strengthen its position in many other markets, similar to what Microsoft had done years earlier. So the key similarity between both companies is that they leverage dominance in one market to reinforce the power in adjacent markets. All right, let's talk about the market dominance. So the Google's dominance in search is overwhelming. According to the case study, Google controls approximately 78% of the global search engine market, which effectively makes it primary gateway through which people access information online. So beyond that, Google also controls massive portions of digital advertising, mobile operating systems through Android, and internet browsing through Chrome. So all of these services reinforce each other and create a self-sustaining ecosystems of data collection and market control. So the network effects make this even stronger. As more users choose Google, more advertisers join the platform, more data is collected, and search results continue improving, making it even harder for competitors to challenge Google's position. So this level of concentration is extraordinary because it gives the company enormous influence over information's access to worldwide. Okay, let's get into the ethical concerns. So the Google's dominance creates ethical concerns that go far beyond economics. One of the biggest issues is algorithmic power. So the Google search algorithms are proprietary and secret, meaning users do not fully understand what certain the result appear first. So this creates concerns involving fairness, manipulation, transparency, and consumer autonomy. Studies shows that the most users, the rarely scroll beyond the first few search results, which means the company controlling those rankings as and has enormous influence over which businesses succeed and which voices are heard. Another concern is information control itself. So let's say if viewpoints, companies, or services are systematically deprioritized, whether intentionally or accidentally through algorithmic bias, the consequences for public discourse and market fairness can be severe. From a cyberethic perspective, systems with this level of social influence should be transparent and accountable, but critics argue that the Google's current structure does not fully meet those standards. Okay, let's talk about self-preferencing. One of the most important equations against Google is the practice known as self-preferencing. So this means placing the Google's own product and services above the competitors in search results. So regardless or objective quality or relevance. For example, Google Shopping allegedly appeared above competing shopping services such as Shopvilla and Nextstack. So Google Flights and Google Travel also appeared prominently above competitors like Expedia, Orbitz, and Priceline. Local search results heavily favor Google Maps and the Google Business listings over um, independent review platforms such as Yelp and TripAdvisor. So the ethical problem here is that the Google acts both as a neutral platform controlling visibility and as a direct competitor inside those some same markets. In many ways, it becomes like similar to referees greatly helping one team win the game. The critic argues that this creates an unfair competitive advantage that smaller companies cannot realistically overcome. Impact on competition. The impact on competition can be extremely serious. For small businesses and independent services, Google's ranking decisions can determine whether a company succeeds or fails. A business moving from page 1 to page 2 in search results can lose most of its the traffic almost instantly. Critics argued that when those ranking changes happen, because Google favors its own services, the market becomes distorted. Another major concern is the effect on innovation. If entrepreneurs believe the Google can simply copy their services and rank itself, the high using search dominance, so the fewer companies may be willing to invest in the competition technologies. Economists sometimes describe this as a kill zone surrounding large technology companies. From an ethical perspective, fairness requires that competition rules apply equally to all companies. So when the platform owner is also competing within the platform and controlling visibility, equal opportunity becomes extremely difficult to maintain. Social welfare. The next question is whether Google's dominance represents the same kind of the threat to social welfare as Microsoft monopoly during the 1990s. In my opinion, the similarities are very strong, although there are also important differences. So Google clearly provides major benefits to society. The company has improved access to information for billions of people worldwide, created highly efficient advertising systems for businesses, and provided useful services like maps, translate, and Scholar at little or no direct cost to users. However, there are also serious risks. Unlike Microsoft, which mainly control operating systems, Google controls access to information itself. That creates the deeper concerns involving democracy, public discourse, privacy, and consumer autonomy. The Google's business model also depends heavily on mass data collection, which that creates additional ethical concerns regarding surveillance and personal privacy. Overall, I believe the Google's influence may actually be broader and more ethically complex than Microsoft's because the information access affects nearly every aspect of modern society. Policy debate. This leads to the debate over whether Google should face stronger restrictions. Personally, I don't believe Google should be competently prohibited from entering other industries because innovation often happens when technology companies expand into connected services. However, I do believe there should be a stronger regulations preventing Google from unfairly favoring its own products through its dominant search platform. Supporters of restrictions they argue that Google's position creates a major conflict of interest because the company controls the platform while simultaneously competing inside it. They also argue that firms with this level of social influence should they face stronger accountability obligations. On the other hand, opponents of restrictions argue that consumers still have alternatives such as the Bing or DuckDuckGo, and that excessive the regulation could reduce innovation and technology's process. I think the real goal should not be punishing success but preventing abuse of power and maintaining fair competition. Let's talk about the legal case. The European Commission's case against Google became one of the most significant antitrust cases in modern technology history. In 2017, the European Union fined Google approximately $2.7 billion for abusing its dominant position in search by systematically favoring its own Google shopping services over competitors. According to the regulators, Google demoted competing comparison shopping services while giving premium placement to its own products. The European Commission concluded that this harmed competition and reduced fair market opportunities across the European Union. The regulators also argued that traffic to competing services dropped dramatically after Google implemented these practices. In later years, the European Union imposed additional multi-million dollar fines related to Android and online advertising practices, showing broader concern about Google's overall ecosystem's power. Defense arguments. If I were Google's attorney, however, I would argue that Google's actions were primarily intended to improve user experience rather than to intentionally harm competitors. Google could claim that users prefer integrated services because they provide faster and more convenient answers directly within search results. The company could also argue that consumers are free to choose alternatives like Bing, Yahoo, or DuckDuckGo, meaning the market is not completely closed. So another defense would be that search algorithms are extremely complex systems involving thousands of ranking factors, so outcomes benefiting the Google products are not necessarily intentional anti-competitive behavior. So Google could also argue that innovation should not be punished simply because the company became highly successful through superior products and heavy investment in research and development. Okay, in this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the real-world connections. The ethical concerns they raised by Google are not isolated to one company. So similar issues now appear across to the entire technology industry. So AI-powered search systems increasingly answer questions directly, so reducing the traffic to external websites and giving large platforms even more control over information access. So social media companies like Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube use recommendation algorithms that strongly influence the public opinion and political discourse. Amazon faces criticism for prioritizing its own products within its marketplace, while the Apple continues facing legal scrutiny over App Store policies and payment restrictions. So this example shows that the modern technology companies increasingly act as gatekeepers of information and commerce. So which means ethical leadership is they becoming just as important as technical innovation itself. In conclusion, Google's story is ultimately a story about power. So, how it's occurred, how it's exercised, and how society chooses to regulate it. I don't believe companies should be punished simply for becoming successful or innovative. However, when dominance is used to exclude competitors, manipulate information access, or reduce fairness in the marketplace, the serious ethical and legal concerns emerge. Governments face the difficult challenge of balancing innovation with accountability while avoiding excessive regulation that could harm technology's process. At the same time, companies operating at Google scale have ethical obligations that go beyond simple legal compliance. So the transparency, fairness, and accountability should be considered essential responsibilities for organizations that control and access the information for billions of people worldwide. And here is the end of the presentation, and I would like to thank you everyone for listening, and I look forward to hearing your perspective on this discussion. Thanks again.